What's going on, guys? It's AmaterasuNinja here, and today we got a commentary talking about the new Evil Dead Rising movie that just came out about 2 weeks ago. And today we got Bo3 Zombies gameplay, which I downloaded again so I can play it. And real quick, if you guys want to watch multiplayer, I'll try to play it. I tried playing yesterday. I was doing pretty good at the beginning, but then I got my ass handed to them by people who still play this thing for like over years. But I mean, I can only play TDM, so if you guys want to watch that, let me know. But again, going back to the movie, I just want to say I'm a really big fan of the Evil Dead franchise. I love the fucking old movies. They're so amazing. I like them. And I'm not saying that I'm that old because the original one, the very first one, came out in 1983. So I'm not that old. I'm only 25 years old. But I did watch it when I was younger, and I did fall in love with it. And if you guys want to, jump into the older movies, I'd recommend starting off with the third one, which is, not particularly involving too much with the Deadites, but it does take place in medieval time because Ash, the OG main protagonist, goes back in time into like this medieval, era, which I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure I saw the second one and then the third one. Third one is my all-time favorite one, so yeah, just want to recommend that real quick. And without further ado, let's get back into talking about the actual movie now. And it starts off with a couple in a cabin with her one friend, and I thought it was a good nod. I thought it was gonna start off and is gonna take place in that cabin like the original movie did. Being like, since they took a holiday there or like a vacation thing, which kind of happened with the original movie, except I think one of their friends was actually battling addiction, so they took a trip to a cabin in the woods, and that's how the movie starts in the original one. But with this one, I think they were just trying to chill and have like a vacation on the cabin. Anyways, it's skipping ahead. They show finally how one of the girls in the trip was actually demon possessed by a Deadite, which is what they call the demons in this universe, in the Evil Dead universe. And so she ends up killing the girl. I mean, this is the beginning of the movie, so I guess I can spoil it. She literally rips the first girl's cranial, like her whole scalp, and it's fucking like brutal as fuck, really fast. It just happens really quick. And I mean, she doesn't die from this. I mean, I would believe that she would bleed out a lot more than she did, but it's fine. I mean, purpose of the movie, I guess. So then we skip to her boyfriend is by a lake in the by the docks. So they end up there. She's like, oh, what's happening? Like, she sees the girl and her scalp literally ripped off. And then her girlfriend shows up and decapitates him with the drone, like, the little drones that they have now, the ones that record. I forgot what they're called. I'm just drones, I guess. But no, she actually decapitates herself with that, and she jumps into the water. For some reason, even though the boyfriend literally just saw her decapitate herself, he decides to jump in the water and tries to rescue her, which then, he can't find her, so he comes back up, and then she basically just ends up drowning him. And after that, we find out that, because I mean, I don't know, this comes out of nowhere, right? Like, she's already demon possessed, and there's no backstory behind this. So it skips back and it tells us that the actual events of the movie are actually gonna take a day prior to that event at the beginning of the movie. So as like to bring it all back together. So we go back to we actually end up meeting the aunt first before we find the main cast. I guess she's part of the main cast. I guess she's like mostly the main character, which is the aunt. I forgot their names, so I'm just gonna say aunt, mother, older brother, middle child, and younger sister, I guess. So just keep that in mind. So she's like in this like underground, it looks like a rave type of thing going on. Well, they didn't actually show like the rave happening, but it's someplace underground. And I heard something about an arm wrestling competition or some shit like that, so I'm not 100% sure what's going on there. Since I've seen this like quite a while ago, but I'm trying to make this video now. And anyways, so she's in the bathroom and she has a childbirth, like the little testing shit, and she's testing herself, and then it's implied that she has a child or she's pregnant, and so she meets up with the rest of her family, her sister, the older brother. There's obviously 3 kids. There's the older brother, like I said, the middle child, which is a girl, which she has like this emo type, like short hair look to her, and then the younger sister, which kind of looks like, if you've seen Chucky, the recently new movie, it kind of looks like her. She looks like a 6 to 7 year old. She looks similar to her. I'm pretty sure it's not her though. So moving on. So after they chop it up in the kitchen, the aunt mentions the father, and then the mother and all the kids are looking at her like with a look of like disbelief in a way, I guess. They're like, oh, she kind of said something she shouldn't have. So the mother sends them off to buy pizza, which kind of mother does that, right? To go buy pizza. Well, the mother and the aunt discuss some things, I guess, for lack of a better word. And she's basically saying how the father left a while ago, and she left messages, but the aunt was occupied with other stuff and blah 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 blah. So if you don't know, the aunt is actually she works like for a band. I think she's like a guitar tunist, I think, something like that. And there's like an on-running joke, or not a joke, or something that they keep saying, where the aunt is called a groupie because the mother of the children calls it groupie, and then she takes offense to it because obviously she doesn't feel like she's a groupie. She feels like she's an actual part of the band member, like, does something important, and not just following the band because she's a groupie. So after quite some time of them talking, the children come back. They pull up from their mother's car into the drive-thru, and this is gonna come later on, so I'm just gonna mention it now. There's a gate for the garage, and they have like a little clicker. I think that's what they're calling it, a clicker that obviously opens the gate automatically from the garage door. They use a clicker, and it's obviously visually depicted that the clickers don't actually work very well, and he's like struggling to open the gate. So whatever, they pull the car into the garage, and then out of nowhere an earthquake starts happening. It cuts to the aunt and the mother upstairs, and they're panicking because like, oh my god, where's the children, right? And after some time, they're like, oh, I need to find my children. She's panicking, she's calling the phone. The phone doesn't work after the earthquake is done. So she starts banging on the neighbor's door, and she's like, oh, help me, I need a ride. So can you help me find my children? Because I sent them to buy pizza, blah, blah, blah. You already know. And the neighbor, the man is like, okay, just let me get my car keys and for them. Meanwhile, while that's happening, the children, there's like a sinkhole. Because of the children, there's like a sinkhole in the garage, and it's about 2 people wide, so it's not like huge. So the older brother, being curious, takes out his phone, turns on the flashlight, and looks down there to see what's down there. And it's earlier stated, which I forgot to mention, that the apartment complex once used to be a bank. So I guess he's assuming that maybe after seeing the vault down there, maybe he'll find some money or something. So he goes in there by curiosity, starts looking out, checking things out down there. And there's a jump scare which I won't spoil, but does happen. And so he sees like a bunch of crosses, like the necklaces, and they're hanging from the ceiling. And obviously, something's up. But he presses on and starts looking at this little. It looks like a sarcophagus, right? So it's like something. Obviously, there's something that would be like to seal something in, right? So there's a little crack in the bottom, I guess caused by the earthquake. He reaches in there. He finds a bunch of records, 3 in total to be exact, and he finds the Necronomicon, or another word that they use in the movie is the Book of the Dead, which obviously it is used in the original movie too, both of them. But I prefer saying Necronomicon, or I guess I should say Book of the Dead, just so you guys understand. But I probably will use them interchangeably from here on. So yeah, he finds a book, he stashes it in his book bag, and after like 5 minutes of the 2 sisters just saying his name repeatedly and saying, come up here, it's not safe, hurry up, blah blah blah. which was kind of annoying for me. And as you can hear, I'm starting to lose my voice a little bit. I don't know why. So it cuts back to the mother and the aunt upstairs, and they're panicked because they want to reach their kids. They can't call. They're trying to call. It doesn't pick. The line doesn't, go through. So I guess the phones aren't working. And after they call the guy, the neighbor, to help them pick up the children, but the ride comes out. It comes back to the children. They're in the elevator, and they come out through the elevator, and they're there. They like have a little reunion, and she's like, "You're not supposed to use the elevator after a earthquake happens," which is understandable. Obviously, like, why would you do that? That's really dangerous after, especially if another tremor happens. So they come back to the apartment. They go into the apartment. The mother's like picking up stuff because you have to move, because after it's stated that the apartment is demolished, so they gotta move out. So she gets her stuff. She's packing things up. The older brother and the middle child, the emo-looking girl, are he whips out the records, the 3 records, and the Necronomicon, or the Book of the Dead, and he's flipping through the book, and he's trying to pry it open, but he can't, and he cuts himself on one of the teeth because of the way it's designed. It has like teeth on the part where the pages are on the side, and he cuts himself with that, thus dropping blood onto the Necronomicon, or the Book of the Dead, which activates it, and it's able to it's open up basically. So he's flipping through the pages, and after a while, meanwhile, it's a Book of the Dead. It's basically a book made of human skin, or human skin and stuff, and the drawings are all made in written in blood. So the middle sister is like being creeped out, and she's like, "What the hell is this? Like, what the hell's going on?" And she's basically scolding him like, "I told you you shouldn't have stole this. What were you thinking? You better return this." And then the older brother rebuttals by saying, "Well, the earthquake just happened. Mom is not gonna let us escape or leave anywhere." And she says, "Yeah, you're right. So tomorrow morning, the first thing you're gonna do is obviously put the book back where you found it." Meanwhile, while that's happening, it cuts back to the mother, and at this point she goes outside the apartment. She goes down the hallway, and she's like thinking, should I take the stairs or should I just take the elevator? And this is one part that annoyed me. I was like, what? This is so stupid, because she decides to take the elevator after staring at the doorway that leads into the stairwell, and she ends up getting inside the elevator, blah blah blah, and she starts making her descent down to the elevator. So it comes back to the older brother, and he starts playing with the record players that he found along with the book, and he starts fidgeting, started playing in reverse, slowing it down, all that stuff. And with that, it starts revealing secrets of how there was a old priest, and she found the Necronomicon, or the way they used was the Book of the Dead, and all the other priests were like, "You shouldn't be playing with that. Like, what's wrong with you?" Basically shunning him because he's trying to discover the Book of the Dead, or discover its secrets. And my voice is getting dried out. But then after a while, it starts chanting these demonic words, demonic chants, Latin, I guess. I guess it would be Latin in tongues. And obviously, at that point, the demon is being let out, and he's frantically trying to stop it. He tries to disconnect the speakers. It's still playing. He tries to. Obviously, it's a record, so he takes out the little needle, but it shocks him, it's stopping him, and it's he can't stop it, it has to play. To which point, it plays out the whole thing. And then he cut back to the mother, back in the elevator once again, and the elevator just skyrockets off to the last floor, the very top of the building where their floor is, and she ends up basically just crashing. The elevator just ends up crashing, and she ends up falling, which gave me quite a laugh. And if you ever seen Family Guy, she kind of ended up like Peter, how he falls, this little cartoonish little legs spread out, one arm underneath, one on top of her head, that type of thing. And yeah, so he cuts off to her. She gets back up, and she's trying to like pry the elevator doors open, to which it doesn't work. And then the demon comes out, and it comes out like a tentacle, like it's on fucking hentai or some shit. And it starts grabbing her and is contorting her body, like breaking her limbs and stuff. Blah, blah, blah. And then it cuts back to the apartment where she shows up, and this is part of the trailer, so it's not really spoilers on this part. And she's like, she turns on the stove full heat, so the flames are just blazing up. Slaps the cast iron on top and just starts chucking eggs into the cast iron, shells and all. And then she starts saying creepy stuff like, "I'm gonna be with my children after we move, and we're gonna be happy, and I'm gonna end up cutting you, and I'm gonna live inside you, and all the like creepy stuff like that." And then everyone was like backing up, just like, "Whoa, what's happening to her?" And she starts crawling her way towards them, and she starts projectile vomiting all over the floor. And after some time, they think like, "Oh, maybe she's just sick. Let's find some help. We need a doctor." So they drag her body through the hallway, outside into the hallway, and they try to take the elevator, but they realize like, oh, it's crashed, like it's destroyed. You can't use it. It's basically unusable. And they're like, oh, the stairs. Let's check the stairs. They check the stairs, and apparently it's just absolutely destroyed, presumably because of the earthquake. So they can't use the stairs. So they drag her body back into the apartment, because obviously they can't do anything. There's no way to get out from their apartment, or their floor, I should say. At that point, she's already dead. And the neighbors come. The guy that was a younger guy. I'm gonna say younger guy and old guy, because there was two neighbors that showed up. So then they come up with a plan. They say, listen, there's a empty apartment down the hall, and if we can break in through the door, there's a fire escape that we can escape through and get some help. So which they go out, and the old man is like, yeah, I have some tools. We can probably use those. So they cut to them trying to like pry open the doorway by slamming the door and whatnot. But while that's happening, the mother wakes up again, and the aunt checks her temperature with her hand, pressing it up against her face. She's like, oh, she's burning up. So I guess they're assuming that she's just sick and she has a fever. So they grab her, they carry her to the bathtub full of water, obviously, and at that point she's like just kicking and screaming like it's burning her flesh, right? Like it's not physically burning her flesh, like you don't see it visually, but it's like if you were to throw holy water in a demon, it's like wiggling around, it's like it bothers her or whatever. So after a couple of seconds of that happening, she just jumps up into the air, and obviously you see this in the trailer too, and she's like hanging onto the walls in the corner of the tub above the tub, I should say. And she's like, she shrieks out and gives this like deathly screech of a demon. And then the two guys that are prying out down the hall, or like prying out the door so they can be free and help her. Here's the screech. I'm like, what the hell is that? But I don't think they really check up on her or anything. So then this is where the deadite mother, is crawling out of the bathtub again, after falling from screeching. She goes and attacks the whole family, and she stabs a shard of glass through the aunt's hand, her hand, and then obviously the kids are helping her, and then she ends up cutting the middle child, the emo girl, with a tattoo machine, and slashes her cheek, because it's implied that in the beginning that she was like a tattoo artist or like some type of artist, right? Which is why they have a tattoo machine. So it slashes her face. They end up getting the mother off of her, and then they push her off. They somehow getting her into the hallway where the other two men are, who are trying to escape so they can get some help, not knowing what the hell's going on. And then these two other neighbors, the two other little kids that were shown for like 5 seconds, not really important enough to mention, but I mentioned them here because the guy that was originally gonna take the mother on the drive to look for the children, his eye gets bitten off from the deadite mother, completely off. Like you just get bitten off. She spits the eyeball off into the one of the other kids, one of the two kids, and he starts choking on the eyeball because it ended up being spit into his mouth. So he chokes to death, and then the younger brother of that guy is like, checking up on him. He was like, "What's happening?" What's that? Don't whatever. Well, this is like in the background, so it's not like you don't hear them or anything. So they ended up slamming the door shut. They lock her out into the hallway, and she just goes to town on these fucking four people that are out there, poor souls. The eyes who got bitten off, he's just laying there in pain. The other kid who's choking to death on the eyeball, she grabs the other little kid, and this scene was beautifully done. I just found it funny. Like I found like it was a really good shot. Like they use this fisheye lens, and they black out the sides, so as to like appear like they're peeking through the peephole. There it is, on the door, and it just shows him being flung across. And just slams against the wall with his head being decapitated, and it's just a really good scene. So the guy that got his eye bitten off pops up in the eye and the people, and he's like, let me in," and then the dead-eye mother just rips his throat off, and then he does. And then here comes the old guy, which wasn't there. I guess he was in his room, presumably to get the shotgun, because he mentioned earlier, since they weren't able to break the lock, he was just gonna shoot the lock off, so they can then obviously get through the fire escape and obviously get help. So he just blasted with a shotgun blast. She goes flying out of sight from the people, and then the old man enters the people, still clutching his shotgun, aiming it towards the demon. He's just looking around. He's like, "Damn, all these bodies are dead." And then he gets dragged out of the screen by the dead-eyed mother, and presumably just torn to shreds off screen. The older brother, the one that had the Necronomicon, and the middle child start arguing because he's like, "Oh, this is all your fault. We shouldn't have stole that. This all happened because of you." And the aunt, being sound of mind, says, "Oh, you guys shouldn't be fighting. Like, this is nobody's fault. Like, don't turn on each other," which is sound reasoning because there's a whole possessed mother, like a demon out there, right? So that was pretty good done. And so the older brother takes the aunt into the room, and she's like, "Oh, look, this is what I found. I think this is why this is all happening. It's because of me." And the middle child, the emo girl, goes to the kitchen to patch up her wound on her cheek from the cut that she has from the tattooing machine, or the tattooing needle. So alone in the living room, and the dead-eyed mother, starts singing a lullaby, getting her attention. So she peeks through the peephole, and at which point she's like, being teased by the dead-eyed mother, and she's like, "Don't do this to me. I'm your mother. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm fine now. Like, everything's fine." And I get what they were going for, but again, I hate this trope, like the stupid child that just falls for it. Like, I knew it was coming, and I see what they were doing, because later on she does does like a 180 and she starts learning from her mistakes. But I just feel like they could have done better with her, or I feel like she could have been ideally a better Deadite if she turned, because after a few seconds, the emo girl turns later on, a little bit later on, within those 10 minutes of that happening. So whatever, she goes into the doorway. She starts being tricked by the dead-eyed mother. She unlocks the door, but she still can't get in because it has the little lock on it, the little chain lock, so it doesn't open all the way. You can only pry it a little bit. And with that little bit of space, the dead-eyed mother grabs the little child and starts choking her through the doorway. And everyone hears the voice of her screaming, so they quickly run towards the door, and they're like, "Oh shit!" Whatever. They get her to safety. They pry her off her hands, and they start kicking the door so that the mother retracts her arm, and they lock her outside once again. And the emo girl ends up turning into a deadite, and she is found like eating a bunch of glass, and she said like stupid stuff, which is why I said I feel like the little girl should have been the deadite. She's like, "Oh, I'm just trying to kill the bugs inside my tummy," like literally word for word. That's what she said, and it just felt so stupid and forced. Like especially her being that old, she looked like a 14, 15-year-old, maybe 16-year-old, right? And for her to say, "I'm trying to kill the bugs in my tummy," like that, it just sounds stupid, and it felt like it should have been the little girl. But I felt like the little girl maybe wouldn't have played the part so well, so they ended up going with the little child. That's what it felt like to me. Anyways, they end up the little girl, and at this point, like, although for some reason the Deadites just drop one person and then go to the next, and it just does that. Like in this scene, like I said, the middle emo girl child is turning into a Deadite, ends up attacking the aunt, but doesn't do anything. He just backs her up into like a wall, and then goes after the older brother, and then the same thing happens. Like he backs up to a wall, and then he sees a little girl, and then he changes her attack towards her, but then she has like this little stick and stabs her through the mouth, and it pierces her through the head, and they assume that she died. So they tie her up to the bed, and the older brother, being smart, after seeing what happened with his mother, ties her up to the bed and puts like a bed cloth, or like a sheet on top of her, so obviously she wouldn't be attacked. So whatever. The aunt has a brilliant idea to go through the records, so maybe to see if there's some kind of magic enchantment that'll stop this. So she gives the brother a knife and says, "Here, so you can protect yourself, just in case." She locks herself in the room of the older brother's bedroom, so she can listen through the record. And while that's happening, the Deadite mother finds a way basically to get into the apartment. And as that's happening, you hear the little sister and the older brother are talking to each other, and obviously hearing sounds. I'm not gonna spoil how she got in there. That being said, he's distracted. He's like listening through the wall. Obviously, I guess I'm just gonna spoil it, but she's going through the ventilation ducts, and him being distracted, the emo sister, the Deadite one, now possessed, ends up sneak attacking him, but she can't obviously like hurt him because she's still wrapped in that cloth. I don't know how she got free, but yeah, she's still wrapped in cloth. He ends up stabbing her. This is another thing that like they end up stabbing the Deadites multiple times, but they always end up leaving the knife on them, which is kind of dumb. Instead of like stabbing them and then pulling it out, so you kind of just stab and then just walk away, or back up with the knife still in them, basically giving them a weapon to use against them. It just goes back to bite them in the ass in a sense. So the Deadite sister attacks him, gets him pinned down, grabs a knife and stabs him through the chest. And I think he grabs like a gas canister, puts it onto the stove that was still on, and ends up burning her alive. And presumably she's dead at this point. So after that happens, both the older brother and the middle child are basically dead at this point. The Deadite mother ends up sneaking inside, at which point I feel like she should have just straight up killed her, the aunt, but she didn't, because she was kind of like stalking her and like teasing her a little bit, which is, I mean, kind of, it happens. This part for the course for an Evil Dead franchise, Deadite. So whatever, she ends up stabbing her, I believe. Stabs her with a pair of scissors that were used earlier on the ground, which the little girl pushed towards her while she was hiding. So they run to the hallway and they try to escape through the apartment that I mentioned earlier with the fire escape. She tries to break it with a hammer, but again, to no avail. So the Deadite mother is again being resurrected because she's not dead. She just yanks the knife that she had lodged in her face out and starts chasing slowly making her way towards them in the hallway. So she picks up the shotgun from the old man that was uh, attacked earlier, and she tries to blow off. She tries to blow off the door, the door lock that was from the abandoned apartment. But then this scene was beautifully done. It reminds me almost exactly like the original Evil Dead movie, where she's like floating in midair and she's like literally flying towards her basically, and it does like this little zoom in into her face. It was beautifully done, almost identical to the original Evil Dead movie, and I loved it. To which she gets scared and then she just snaps onto her and just blows off one of her legs. And again, the Deadite, being an evil demon, tries to confuse them by acting like she's normal again and saying, "Don't take me away from my child. Don't do this, please." But she doesn't fall for it, and she blasts off her arm. And then everyone else in the hallway starts turning into Deadites and coming back to life. Like the older brother, the sister, the middle child comes back to life again because they're not dead. The only way you can defeat them realistically is by decapitation, like complete decapitation. So whatever, they're taunting her, and this is where it starts feeling like the most authentic Evil Dead like movie. Like it goes full into the characters. It just feels like almost like identical to the original. Up to this point, it wasn't like, I feel like they were trying hard, but they couldn't quite capture the essence of the Evil Dead franchise. But at this point, they had it perfectly nailed on. And this only like 15 minutes left into the movie at this point. And everyone in the hallway starts chanting "Dead by Dawn," which I feel like that should have been the original title of this movie, Evil Dead: Dead by Dawn, or something along those lines. Should have been way better. But anyways, the elevator is just somehow fixed, and they make their way down to the parking floor, the parking garage, or they're trying to at least. But on the way there, the elevator starts getting filled with blood, and kind of reminiscent of what's that movie called? Kind of reminiscent of The Shining, and the elevator starts getting filled with blood, and then all the Deadites in the hallway in that apartment floor just starts combining together in a combination of like this giant demon, basically this Deadite, and it kind of looks like something similar to the Forest, if you ever played that game, like those big creatures that are like somewhat similar to like a huge worm, like with a bunch of limbs just coming off of it, and they all contort their bodies together and just fuse. And it's a really nice scene. I like the design of it, how they did that. It was pretty cool. It was a really nice touch. So they make it to the bottom floor, and the demon is trying to basically attack them in the elevator, and then the elevator just pries open somehow, not really shown how, but it just opens up, and it just a bunch of blood just comes pouring out again, like The Shining, like in the movie The Shining. So they gather up, the little girl and the aunt. They make it to the car, and as stated earlier, they use the clicker to open the gate, but obviously being faulty, it doesn't really work until it finally works, and then she starts pressing the gas. But wouldn't you know it, the little pothole where the vault is, where they originally found the Necronomicon, the older boy, just happens to be in the way, so the car gets stuck and they're unable to escape because the demon catches up to them, almost like attempting to pull them out of the car. But by the time it reaches the car door, they're already gone, or not really gone, but just on the other side of the car, hiding. So whatever, skipping ahead, the Deadite mother already pressed the clicker, so it starts closing. So they make a run to it, and they almost make it out. They narrowly almost escape. I mean, they basically do, but just before it closes completely shut, the little girl gets dragged in by the Deadite, the amalgamations of the Deadite, and now she's running for her life, and she goes into this little cubby. I don't know what it is. It looks like a little elevator shaft, like a maintenance thing. And the Deadeye is struggling to crawl in through that little space, that little gap. And the aunt kicks in the little cage part, this little cage side part of the gate, and makes her way back inside into the garage. So it cuts back to the little girl again, struggling. She's like kicking and screaming for her life, and then it shows the chainsaw. Like, it just shows the blade of the chainsaw, which I thought was the man, the myth, the legend. I thought it was gonna be Ash returning and just somehow gonna save them, but it just turns out it was just a random fucking chainsaw right there. Then I grabs the chainsaw and chucks it back at the aunt, but she's pointing the shotgun at her, almost about to blast. But as she throws it, she falls backwards after standing on a random ass wood chipper for some reason. Like, I don't understand why the wood chipper was there in the garage, especially being in the city, which is completely fucking weird, and the chainsaw just being there. But again, I mean, they have to put in the chainsaw because it's so iconic to the Evil Dead franchise, you know? It's like the go-to weapon, basically, especially for Ash. So the Deadeye is literally on top of the wood chipper, and she's dragging the aunt into it so she can die. Activates the wood chipper, and meanwhile, the little girl, the younger sister, is like standing off to the side, and she sees how the Deadeye activates the wood chipper. So as it's distracted trying to pull in the aunt, she runs up to it and turns off the wood chipper. And with that, she just basically saved her aunt's life within like like literally a second away from dying. And then the Deadeye starts crawling towards her, going through the wood chipper, like the little, or you know where you would slide in the logs so that it can start breaking down the wood and shit for some reason. And she's like, turn on the wood chipper, and she turns it on, and it starts getting decapitated and slowly gets dragged into the wood chipper. And she grabs the chainsaw and just starts decapitating her face off. And again, in typical Deadeye fashion, she's like, don't do this to me, come on, we're family. And she doesn't want anything to do with that. Like, she just starts cutting off her fucking forehead. And, you know, basically her whole body's just decapitated completely. But she's like, her head is just cut off. The rest of her body, all the other Deadites are dead, but it's just the mother now in her head, and she's still talking and making fun of her, calling her groupie, and she gets mad and she just kicks her head into the wood chipper. And they finally feel like they escape. They think it's all over. They drive off or they walk away. Not before obviously picking up the wood chipper, which is weird because, you know, literally covered in blood and walking through the streets with a fucking chainsaw, holding a little girl. It just seems like, you know, they'd probably get arrested or some shit. Whatever. That's just the point. Now, this is the most let me use that word. I can use that word, but I probably shouldn't use that word. Now, the most dumbest part, it comes back to the main girl from the beginning. That was the original Deadeye. That happened the day afterwards, you know, before the time skip back so that we understand the story. Now, she somehow it shows like she was in the basement. And apparently, like, I guess there's apartments down there in the basement too. And she's planning out. She calls her friend. She's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna pick you up in 15 minutes." Blah 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 blah. And she's walking through the garage, not noticing the fucking blood that's literally spewed everywhere. So she turns around after hanging up, and she's like, "What the fuck?" And then she notices the blood, and she's like, "What the hell what's going on? Like, what the fuck is all this?" And she's panicked. She has like this distraught face. I was like, "Oh my god, this whole place is covered in blood. Like, what the hell happened?" And then the movie ends just like that. But that means, I mean, and then yeah, she gets attacked by the Deadite. I guess I don't know who the fuck was left. Maybe I'm assuming maybe the cat turned into a Deadite and just attacked her, because they were animals too that were Deadites in the original one. So that's what I'm assuming happened. It was the cat that was just left alive and, you know, ended up attacking her, thus turning her into a Deadite. And then when they got to the cabin in the woods, ended up attacking her friend and the boyfriend, thus having Deadites unleashed into the world. But that being said, that's the end of the movie. That's literally what happens. I'm sorry if I spoiled it for you, but you know I kind of did warn you. And let me guys know what you think. I know this is a long one. I'm gonna try editing it as best as I can. I probably left some few things out because I had to redo this like 3 times because I accidentally deleted the fucking audio file, and it's just it was such a pain. But again, let me guys know how you guys enjoyed it. If let me know what I can do better. If I can, you know, if what you enjoyed, what not, leave it down in the comments. Again, subscribe. I can be playing more zombies. I might upload some zombies if you guys are into that. Let me know. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. Yeah, I think I got the last one on me, so we got all the ones on. And as always, peace out, deuces. I mean, MP4 is nice, isn't it? Okay, I guess we can just come back. Fuck it. Just end it. What the fuck? Oh, there. I was about to say, what the hell is that red screen for?